the poorest in our country. We must take everyone through us.
Right, well, the news is on now about the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, which is David Cameron, the Conservative. And I made a video yesterday, and so I thought I'd follow it up, as now it is Gordon Brown resigned effective immediately. He was the head of the Labour Party, and it seems that well, I'm surprised. You know, the Labour and the Liberal Democrats are very close policy-wise than the Tories. I know a lot of these parties now are all very similar and all more to the middle than the left or the right, as they used to be in the past. And it was interesting to hear David Cameron speaking, and he does sound a lot like a Labour Prime Minister or a Liberal. They all tend to sound, you know, because they're all coming from the middle rather than Tories usually come from the right. And though I do wonder what's going to happen. It's always the thing with politicians that they will sell, you know, they speak very well, well, some of them do, and they will sell you these ideals. Even like President Obama, I could say the same about him. He talks a lot of change, you know, when he got in to get in, or when he had got in, talked a lot about change and used that word a lot, and a lot of the words he used were metaphors, which sound very good but mean very little. They make you feel that a lot is going to change, and yet has anything really changed in America since he's taken over? No. He talked about change as if he was going to, you know, make the world a better place, you know, where, you know, when people were listening to that, they would get the feeling that, you know, they're not going to have poverty anymore, they're not going to have disease, they're not going to have all this, the other, by certain connotations that he uses, certain metaphors, and yet it's exactly the same, and nothing has changed. The same, not so bad over here in the United Kingdom, but still the same idea, where they use a lot of metaphors rather than actually spelling out the exact policies that they're going to do. They talk about responsibility, they talk about change, they talk about this, that, but they tend to be in words that don't actually, you know, it's very poetical, these politicians and their speeches, and they capture, you know, they make people feel a certain way. But it'd be interesting to see what's done. I'm very surprised that Nick Clegg, who I think is a traitor to the Liberal Democrats, and I think any work that he's done for them, and he has done a lot, because he's come across as a very eloquent speaker, as has David Cameron, and they both seem, you know, but then so did Tony Blair, and we all know where he led us, and you know, just being, even Bill Clinton was a very good speaker, so just that isn't really the you know, the PR image of a Prime Minister isn't, you know, it's a good thing, but it's actually what he does inside, what he does in power, that will be the thing that he really should be tested upon. Unfortunately, in this media age, we tend to overlook that these days. We tend to actually, you know, concentrate on, you know, small little things to do with their appearance or how they speak or what words they say, or even catch them out by leaving microphones on so we can hear them, you know, like with Gordon Brown, when he one of the women that he was talking to was questioning him about immigration. He made a comment afterwards when he thought his microphone was taken off, which I'm sure, and it's interesting how everyone in the country sort of went against that, thinking, how could he say such a thing? And yet, do we not all do that? You know, if we're really honest, yes, we do. There's lots of times we speak to someone and we say something nice to them, and, you know, or just, you know, medium to them, and then but we're just saying it, you know, and we might not actually believing what they're saying, and then the minute they're gone, we say something else. I mean, that is human nature, and it's interesting that these politicians and people and the media say all these things. And I mean, the media are the worst people in the world. They will stab you, they will stab their own mother in the back just to get a story. I mean, let's be honest, the media are the most immoral when it comes to truth and it comes to reporting. Most of the things that they report are sensationalized and are based on half-truths and gossip and all sorts of things. So, you know, them making some moral statement as if, you know, they would lie and cheat just to get anything out of anyone. So that does these double standards that you get from politicians and media and people as well, who just because they don't like Gordon Brown. I mean, he inherited Tony Blair's tenure when Tony Blair had damaged the Labour Party to such an extent that if he had been in power, Labour definitely would have lost. The fact that Gordon Brown took over was the only chance that Labour had. People tend to forget that, because they tend to idolise Tony Blair and remember his formative years rather than the mess that he got us in democratically. A Richard Nixon moment that he got us with when he got into bed with George W. Bush and led us into 2 internationally illegal wars that people don't like to believe. But if you believe Kofi Annan, who was the head of the UN after the war, though not much point saying afterwards that it was an illegal war, and it was an illegal war because there were no weapons of mass destruction, and they never will be found, and there never were any there. It was a regime change, and which they even admitted afterwards. When there was no weapons of mass destruction found, they admitted that the reasons for doing it, which they didn't admit at the time, was that to remove Saddam Hussein, which of course is regime change, and regime change is illegal in international law. They didn't mention it at the time because they had the weapons of mass destruction instead, and they could use resolutions which they misused and were not used properly, and the world let it happen. Anyway, that's enough for Tony Blair. Yes, Gordon Brown, I think, is extremely honourable, and he left the party, and it's interesting that he couldn't win. Even when he left the party, and he did what the media wanted him to do, and then they even attacked him for leaving, saying it was some calculated thing to be able to get Labour into power. Don't tell me you wouldn't do the same thing if you were in the same position. He didn't have to give up his position. He gave up his position because Nick Clegg didn't want to work with Labour, and therefore he was doing the best he could for his party. And I think he's come across, the media's attacked him a lot, and they've been very unfair, and I think the public's been very unfair, their perception of Gordon Brown. A man who comes across as very Labour, who comes across as wanting to do the best thing, even if he sometimes doesn't say the right things, or doesn't have the PR that Tony Blair had or whatever. He is the far, far more moral man than Tony Blair ever was. Tony Blair has blood on his hands, and a lot of people don't like to admit that, but if you actually look at, and in the future we will all be aware of that, at least Gordon Brown does not have that. He did what was right for the party. He was part of the reason why Labour got in back in 97 as well. He was, and he kept them in power by keeping a good financial record. And I think it's disgraceful that this has had to happen in British politics, and that Nick Clegg has, I think, has been the worst out of all of them. I don't blame David Cameron for what he did to try and get power, but I think Nick Clegg has, got his bit of power. It's gone to his head, and I just don't think. I don't think he's done politics or his party any favours, and I hope that the Liberal Democrat MPs and party vote against it and stop him from getting his position, because I don't think he is, he's doing the right thing, but I'm sure he will get it through. And David Cameron is trying to sound as Labour and Lib Dem as he possibly can. But it'd be interesting. Maybe he has changed. Maybe these days of having parties that are left and right and centre have all gone, and now maybe all their which they should be, is to serve the country and to serve it in the best way. And let's see what he does, and whether he rewrites what it is to be a Tory. Let's hope so. Otherwise, yes. Anyway, that's it. That's my waffle for today, and a very eventful day. It was interesting to see how it happens as well, the change of power, how in the United Kingdom that it happens so instantly. Within an hour you have one lot going out and one lot coming in. It is a testament to politics. Anyway, it's been very interesting, and let's see what the future holds under now a new coalition government, the first since the Second World War, of the Conservatives, David Cameron, and Lib Dem Nick Clegg. Okay, take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.